All right, let's talk about this more important topic, another important topic, zeros of a rational function. All right, recall that the value of k is a zero of the function f of x if what's true? F of k, when you enter it, I get a zero back out. Right, so let Rx be a rational function with no common factors between the denominator and numerator. Now, what do I mean by common factor? So here's an example. If I do the following, I see that we have no common factor. I got x minus 1 times x plus 3. I got x plus 5, x minus 7. There's no common factors. Unlike this one. Notice now we have here a common factor of x plus 7. Notice we got x plus 7, x plus 7. So what we want right now, let Rx be a rational function with no common factor between the denominator and numerator. So we don't want this. We want this type of thing. Then the zeros of a rational function can only come from making the numerator 0. Okay? After all, for a fraction to be equal to 0, the numerator must be 0. In other words, if I have 0 divided by 3, I get 0. 0 divided by 7, that's 0. So the only way you can have 0 is if the numerator is 0. Okay, not the denominator. We don't want that. And in order for this to happen, I cannot have this situation. So if I have a common factor, then this will not be it. So negative 7, for example, will not be a 0. We have to have a situation like this. Okay, so for example, let's do a quick one here. What is the 0 of Rx equals 2x squared minus x minus 3 divided by x squared minus x minus 3? What is the vertical asymptote? So first of all, what I'm going to do is I'm going to factor numerator and denominator. So this is prime. So, and this is prime. So I'm going to do this first. I'm going to 1 times 3 is 3, great. 2 times 2x squared, great. But I need a difference of 1. And I see this is negative, so one of these has to be negative. So now, upon writing this, I'm not happy with what I wrote. Because I'm doing a quick calculation. I'm doing inner times inner, outer times outer, and the sum has to give me that negative 1 that's sitting here. Okay, but I'm not getting that. I can see that I'm not going to get that. So I'm going to switch these two around. But I have no choice. This has to be a 2, and that's 2 times 1, this has 3 times 1. So now, if I do this, if I make this negative and positive, so negative 3 times 1 is negative 3, great. 2x times x is 2x squared, so again, negative 3x here, 2x times 1 is 2x, add them up, so add these two up. Sorry, positive. And I see that I get negative x just like I want. So I factored that correctly. Okay, and then I'm going to factor the denominator as well. So I know that x comes from x times x. Here I got no choice. It's got to be a 3 and a 1. So either this is going to work or it's just not going to work. Oh my God, it's not going to work, is it? What was I thinking? 3x, I can't get that because it's going to be a most 2x. Guess what? I'm going to cheat. I'm going to change this. All right, so now having done that, put that there, and now do I get what I need? -1 times 1 times -3 is -3, great, that gives me that. And sure enough, if I do the calculations, that is correct. Fantastic, I've done it. So what is a 0 of R of X? Well, now, first of all, I notice that this now has a common factor. So this is not going to produce a 0, okay? So that's not going to work. This, however, is not common denominator, so there's only one 0. And that's going to come from setting this factor equal to 0. Okay, so now I'm going to add 3 to both sides, divide by 2, and that is it. The 0 of this function is yes, that's it. That's the only 0. Wait a minute, but if I put -1 here, doesn't that become a 0? No. So the one question we are going to have is, what the heck is 0 divided by 0? So we're not going to talk about that. We're going to say this is not undefined, it's even worse than undefined, but let's just, yeah, don't worry. We're not going to divide 0 divided by 0. So and that does not produce 0, by the way. Okay, so it does not produce 0. Okay, what is a 0 and what's the vertical asymptote of this function? The vertical asymptote, I'm going to call VA, is x equals 3/2. So this has a vertical asymptote at 3/2. That's where it's located. All right. Oh, sorry. What is the vertical asymptote? That's not correct. Sorry. What is the vertical asymptote? So the vertical asymptote happens from the denominator. Okay. So the 0 comes from the numerator. The vertical asymptote comes from the denominator. So now, if I want to find the vertical asymptote, I'm going to, again, see how this repeats? I cannot use that. It only has one vertical asymptote at setting this equal to 0. So the vertical asymptote comes from the denominator. The zeros come from the numerator. Okay, and if the factors are equal like this, it produces neither a vertical asymptote not a 0. And we're going to discuss next what it does produce. So now set. So vertical asymptote. And what is produced here? Well, set this equal to 0, and we see that it's 3, and that is the vertical asymptote at x equals 3, and there's 0 at 3/2. Great. Let's look at another example. What is the 0 of this, and what is this vertical asymptote? So again, if I want to know the 0, the only thing I need to look at is the numerator, but I got to make sure there's no repeating factors. So I'm going to factor the numerator out. Let's see, a 6. I could do 6 times 1 or 2 times 3. I'd like to do, sorry, 2 times 3. I like to break it up a little bit. I could do 6 and 1, but that seems extreme. So I'm going to go 2 and 3 and see what happens. 3 here, I have no choice. I know that I'm trying to get to 11, so I'm going to put the 3 over here. Why? Because I'm already kind of thinking about multiplying these two numbers together. And I need to get to 11, and that seems to most likely work. So I need to get a positive 3 and a positive 11, so make these two positive. And I can see that that's going to work out. 3 times 3 is 9. 2 times 1 is 2. 9 plus 2 is 11. So I factored correctly. Now I'm going to factor the denominator. Again, this is prime. This is prime. I have not much choice. So didn't I just do that above here? I did. Yeah, it is right there. So I just need to copy what's sitting here. 2x minus 3. Yep, and then x plus 1, right? All right, fantastic. Does that seem correct? So make sure, yes, right? 3, great. I think I'm happy. Just want to make sure that didn't goof anything up. I'm not seeing it. Great, let's say this is correct. So now where's the zero come from? Again, we're pretty close, but one's positive, one's negative, so these are not common, no common factors. So now the zeros are going to come from setting both of these equal to 0. So set 2x plus 3 equal to 0. Solve. Then I get x equals negative 3/2, that's a 0. And then I set the other one also equal to 0. And sorry, I'm having a little hard time thinking at the moment. Subtract, and I get that. So my zeros are going to be negative 3/2, negative 1. So that means if I enter negative 3/2 here, the output is 0. I enter negative 1 into this, the output is 0. Okay. Now, what about the vertical asymptotes? So if I want to do the vertical asymptotes, I need to set these two equal to 0. And so I set 2x minus 3 equal to 0. And I already got the answer. The answer was x equals 3/2. So one vertical asymptote is at 3/2. And now I set this one equal to 0. Oh, I'm sorry, I should have done that one with a 0. And having a hard time. So, okay, so this is not correct. That's not a 0. It's negative 1. So the other vertical asymptote is x equals negative 1. So we have two vertical asymptotes, negative 1. What is the other 0? I need to set the other factor here. How come nobody said anything? Now just let me write this down. No, stop it. Okay, all right. So 3x plus 1 equal to 0. Solve for that. Subtract 1 from both sides. Divide by 3. And when I do that, I get the other 0 being negative 1/3. So that's my other 0, and my vertical asymptotes are 3/2 and negative 1. So again, no common factor, so I can set, I want to find vertical asymptotes, set the factors at the denominator equal to 0. Want to find zeros, set the numerators equal to 0. That's how you do it. Zeros come from the numerator. Vertical asymptotes come from the denominator. And this also assumes that there is no common factor between these two. So if there's a common factor, this is not going to be a 0, and this is not going to be a vertical asymptote.